An important element of a midlife crisis is the dying of a dream. And what I mean by that is the dream is about a sense of self. It's a sense of identity. It's a part of our identity that we've been living as for a certain amount of time, that at midlife or a midlife crisis, it is kind of finished. It's kind of run its course, and it's kind of time for something else to start happening, but nothing else is happening yet. And so at this important time, it is crucial to begin to start a new dream as soon as possible. And it's not just filling in the blanks with just anything. It's a dream that is connected to your genius, a dream that's connected to something intrinsically real in you that will replace the new expedition into a new sense of identity. Now I want to read a quote by Carl Jung that kind of pertains to this, and it's pretty interesting. He says, if one doesn't constantly walk forward, the past sucks one back. The past is like an enormous sucking wind that sucks one back all the time. If you don't go forward, you regress. You might have to constantly carry the torch of the new light forward, so to speak, historically and in your own life. As soon as you begin to look backwards sadly or even scornfully, it has you again. The past has a tremendous power. Now this sounds pretty ominous. It sounds pretty heavy. And I'm sure Carl Jung had plenty of reasons to be, with all of his research, plenty of reasons to be this grave about the past. So let's just take it, for what it's worth. Let's take it at face value and say the past, according to Jung, was very important to kind of let go of and move forward by this quote. And so what's important about that in terms of midlife and in terms of moving through this transitional period is about dreaming a new dream, creating a new sense of self out of the ashes of what has happened before. One of the things that's happened is that we have lost our old self. Now, when we lose something, there is a requisite time of mourning, of grieving, of living through the loss and moving through the process of having lost something really important to us. This sense of identity that we just lost at midlife, that when we just realized, I can no longer be this, but yet I don't know what else I'm going to do, this thing needs to be grieved, and sometimes that grieving, sometimes that mourning, sometimes that loss looks like anxiety. It looks like panic. It looks like depression. It looks like confusion. This is all part of the grieving process, and most people don't realize that we do indeed have to process the grief of having lost a dream, because the dream is a part of ourselves. The dream is the part of our identity that we've identified with strongly to live out this sense of identity that we've been living in up until this point. And so without that sense of identity to move forward in, we feel kind of lost. We feel kind of abandoned. We feel hopeless. It can take the shape of any of those types of symptoms. One of the best ways to move through this midlife crisis after we've mourned the loss and given time for the fact that, yes, that part of my life is over, is to begin to dream a new dream and see ourselves in the future. Now this is imagining a sense of self, imagining ourselves as a person in the future with certain qualities, with certain circumstances, with certain people, with certain events. And this imagining is a healthy movement towards moving forward, like Jung was indicating. Moving forward and not being sucked back into what didn't work. It only worked for a little while and it's no longer working. So having a new dream is a necessary element in moving forward because it kind of anchors us into the forward movement of life. That forward movement that Jung was talking about. So having an anchor pulls us into the future, into a new iteration of ourselves that is completely necessary and is a part of flowing with this present moment and moving into the future. We were all born with a genius identity, a seed of identity expressed as the universe. And at midlife, it's really important to bring this seed into the forefront again and try to get in touch with what that thing is, what it wants to express, how it wants to express. Because this seed of identity also has an anchor into the future. It has an anchor into who, when we're developing naturally and authentically, we will develop into. Who and what we will develop into. So at midlife, instead of just creating some kind of random future, it's good to look back to wherever we were before we learned all the things that made us our first version of ourselves. Go back to that point and realize what we were born with organically as an individual, and anchor into that to move us into the future for the new dream that comes after midlife. And so, even though the past has power, it only has power if we're not moving forward. It only has power if we're not actively dreaming our new dream. It only has power if we are not carrying the torch and the light of our truth, our genius identity, forward into the future as an expression of self. And so this is really important at midlife, to find this sense of self that you were born with and give it new lungs, new ways to breathe into the future, into the present moment, moving into the future. And so after you've given yourself time to grieve, time to process what you've lost, it's time again to move forward so that the past doesn't suck you back into it. And you can do this by identifying with what you were born with your genius qualities, with your genius self, identifying with that and moving forward purposefully and meaningfully into the future with a new sense of self. If you'd like to learn more about how to live your life with a sense of meaning, purpose, and fulfillment, check out thegeniusway.com for more tools, tips, and encouragement.